Let us start by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. Devika, your hand is up. You can't hear me? Devika, your speaker is not connected maybe, because others can hear me, yes?
Yes.
All right. Devika, it is something on your side, Devika. Right. If we turn to page number 144. Compendium of bases, Vattu Sangaha. In the summary of bases, there are 6 bases, namely eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and heart base. All these too are found in the sense world. But in the fine material world, there are 3 bases: nose, tongue, and body are not found. In the immaterial world, there is no base. Guide to para 20. Analysis of bases. Devika, are you all right now? Good. Analysis of bases. In those planes of existence where materiality obtains, chittas and chetasikas arise in dependence on a condition called a base. Did we have any questions regarding the difference between a base and a do from last week, what we studied? Did you have time to go through the notes? And if you did you have any sort of questions that question marks, places that you did not understand? Susan?
No, the base and the dough, like the pizza.
All right. So, analysis of bases. A base is a physical support for the occurrence. Did we not go through this? We did, didn't we?
We came to the bottom.
We came up with heart base.
Heart base. Hadeva.
Yeah, heart base.
Yeah, heart base, Bhante.
Page number?
Same page.
Same page, bottom.
The last paragraph.
All right, thank you. Heart base, Hadevattu. According to the Pali commentators, the heart serves as a physical support for all chittas other than the 2 sets of 5-fold sense consciousness. Right? According to the Pali commentators, the heart serves as a physical support for all chittas other than the 2 sets of 5 sense consciousnesses. Why? Because the 5-fold, the 2 sets of the 5-fold sense consciousnesses arises at the respective sense base. I'm sorry, sense do, right? At the sense do. The physical support, the commentator, we have spoken about this, the physical base, meaning that it is said by the commentators that the consciousness arises, or the mind arises, based on a thick blood deep within the heart, which is known as the Hadevattu. The heart is not known as the Hadevattu. The place where it bases itself on a physicality within the heart is known as the Hadevattu, right? as a Hadevat. There are different schools of thought regarding this, where Hadeya means core, the primary place, the core, the seat of mind, right? So there are different sort of enumerations upon to which discusses what this could mean or how this could be taken. But what we know through the commentaries is what I mentioned before, where the mind or the seat of mind is considered to arise based on a thick blood deep within the heart, right? Deep within the heart. In canonical Abhidhamma, the heart base is not expressly mentioned. The Patthana, the last book of the Abhidhamma Pitaka, simply speaks of the matter in dependence on which the mind element and the mind consciousness occur. The commentaries, however, subsequently specify that matter to be the heart base, a cavity situated within the physical heart, a cavity situated within the physical heart. In the sense world, etc., in the sensuous plane of existence, all 6 bases are found. So now we are moving on from where the heart base is. Any questions with regard to that section of the heart base? What it basically mentioned is we do not know clearly. It is not expressingly spoken about, but this is what is mentioned. This is what is mentioned, and they go on to now to talk about the sense world. In the sensuous plane of existence, all 6 bases are found, except in the case of those who are born blind or deaf. In the fine material world, the 3 bases of nose, tongue, and body are not found, right? The supports for the corresponding type of sensuous experience are absent. Since these types of sense experience are coarser in quality than the other 2, sight and hearing, right? What does this mean, right? I think it is clear, but to those of you to whom it is not clear, the fine material plane is a very subtle, or it maintains, although as the word mentions, it's a fine material, it's a very subtle form, right? It's a very subtle form. Now, what is not the nose, tongue, and the body, right? In the fine material world, the 3 bases of nose, tongue, and body, the supports for the corresponding types of sensuous experience are absent, since these types of sense experiences are coarser than the quality of sight and hearing, right? So this is all to do. Now, just imagine the Devas, right? The Devas are more subtler than humans, right? To an extent where it is said that there are certain planes of deities where these deities cannot experience, or their form is too subtle to experience forms of hatred, right? It is said that the moment that hatred or that kind of a consciousness arises, that one is unable to sort of persevere in that specific realm. It is even more true in the fine material. It is said that in any chance that this sort of a consciousness arises, the deity dies, right? The deity dies. Then, of course, it comes into question all the stories about Mahabrahma, cursing and, killing and, all of these things comes to question, right? The fact that the body, the physical, it is like, for example, now when one is very old and frail and feeble, we are very careful of that person's heart. We don't try to shock the person, in that kind of a way. Just imagine the body being so subtle that it cannot take the normal things that we would take, right? Now, that is where, for example, now we find in certain sort of spiritual, not spiritual, but sort of religious, cultish sort of experiences where one would use the spirits to incur damage and to cause trauma to other people. These things are often not done by devas or deities. These things are, in most cases, done by pretas, yakkas, kumbhandas, pisachas, and all the low beings, right? This is in a way also these beings who take delight in creating ignorance, creating hatred, creating wrong view, right? Creating wrong view. Now, there was this monk, Venerable Jnana, I can't remember his name. I can't remember his name. So, who was speaking about his experiences, because he used to live in Mount Kailash. He used to speak about his experiences with these sort of creatures, the low creatures, where he would say when we are connecting the Panchasila, he would speak about a householder's house being like a movie ground or like a theater to these beings, where they delight in unwholesomeness, unwholesome energies which are done within the house. For example, so what would then happen is, when it is an unwholesome energy, creating trouble within a house is now something that they delight in. It is almost as if we would, watch a movie with some popcorn. It is said that they would watch us, laughing and giggling from the trees. This is an experience that this monk, who is said to see all of these things because of his meditation, something that he explains. But to say, as we come back to topic, this is to say that beings of that higher realm, as we go beyond, as we go further away from earth, from the human realm, the bodies become more and more subtle, right? More and more subtle, right? Yes, Hasu, yes, you can ask a question. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Hasu, and I'm new to this place.
Yes.
I was actually here for the meditation session before,
Yes.
and this is my first class for the Monday session. And may I please know which page this is?
Yes, it's page number 144. Actually, now it's 145.
100. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Rivini and Pushpa, Rivini has asked, do all devas die in this way? No, not all devas do not die in this way. It is also only specific deities who cannot take this kind of a experience, especially the ones who are furthest away from the human realm. Most of the deities, of course, usually die out of when their merits sort of die away, or rather when their merits finish. During this time where, this is actually explained, this is usually, or the devas dying away is usually also explained in ways that the monks leave robes, actually, because it is such a blessed place to be in, right? But actually, I see in today's world, it is a little bit difficult to sort of really work with that example. But maybe in earlier times, we could have worked with this example, because monkhood is not as pristine as it used to be, right? Meaning, for example, not all monks know the Dhamma, not all monks know meditation, not all monks practice, not all monks, it is very easy to find a monk who has never even sat for or gone to a forest, or even sat for a retreat. So it is difficult to use this example primarily now, but when the example was originally used, what was meant was for a person to see in the way deserving of the Dhamma. That is a blessed thought which arises when the paramis are of a certain level and fruition. When the paramis, or when your ability to sort of discern the Dhamma in this sort of way has died down, we say that the merit is now reducing. This often happens because if you are not developing new karma, it is as if I used to like the example of drinking from a glass of water without filling it up, right? Without filling it up. So when you drink from it and drink from it, and when there is no drop left, you cannot fill it any longer. You're done for. You're going to throw the glass away, right? It is something of that sort, right? So that is why as we develop with the mindfulness, these aspects are very, very important to anyone, not only monks, but anyone who is walking the path of Dhamma, because this small, for example, this class is motivating us to do something more, right? The meditations that we do motivate us in some way. We are, for example, we listen to talks, speaking about Mahakassapa and all these Rahatan Vahanses and all of these people who are very honorable and very sort of venerable, but it doesn't mean that we are going to meet them in this life, or we are going to meet people of that sort, or we are going to reach those stages. But what it essentially does is create an energy within us which motivates us to reach a Dhamma. That is what we sort of see as the fruit of that, right? That motivation, that sort of grasp towards what is wholesome, that is created by reading the Dhamma and doing all of these things that we essentially do, right? It can be explained in many niyayas of the Patthana as well, which we will come to later on, but it can be explained in many ways. That is why, for example, Kalyana Mitra Sevana is very important. Dhamma Sakaccha, Dhamma Shravana, listening to Dhamma discussion, having good friends of Dhamma who speak Dhamma. All of these things become important because it creates this sort of flow of Dhamma and the flow into a Dhammic life, which allows us, not for any other reason, not to be more Buddhist, not to see more holy, not to look like you're more holy, none of those reasons, to create the movement of mind necessary to witness, experience, and bring about a Dhammic life for yourself to be more enlightened. That's the only reason. So not for any sort of showing off aspect, right? But all to do with motivating yourself into the practice more, right? Just like when we go shopping, we see different things, you want that handbag or that new tie or the shoes or, all of these things, the more that you go, you see things that you like more, right? The more that we walk on the path of Dhamma, very similar. Right? It is like window shopping at a spiritual level. Right? So we want to get things. Oh, it would be wonderful if I can have metta towards everyone. It can be wonderful if I can have this amount of patience, right? So it is in that way. That is why we live a Dhammic life, to motivate ourselves to travel the path of Dhamma, to arrive at a more enlightened state of mind. Coming back to the book, page number 145.
Bhante,
Yeah.
another question.
Mm.
Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
Bhante, when you're talking about the fine material sphere, and so without having a body or without having a subtle body, you don't have a, you don't really, is it possible for someone to realize three elements or tilakkana?
It's like this, Tamsiri. Right?
Yeah.
Now, how can I say? We, with the level of intelligence that we have, we often need examples to realize things.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, for example, we don't remember hell, but from the description of hell, we paint an image of hell.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have seen poverty in the world, we can imagine what hell would look like in comparison.
Yeah.
these beings who are of higher levels, now it is said these beings can attain arahanthood faster than we ever could. They have a tikka panya, it is said.
Okay.
What is the English translation of tikka panya? Does anyone know? Right, which is as I remember, it's penetrative wisdom. It's not penetrative wisdom. It is sharp. It's a very sharp wisdom, right? Which enables one to understand the Dhamma very, very easily. Right?
Intuitive wisdom, Bhante.
No, it's not. So it's a level of sharp wisdom. Now that exists at a higher level for these beings. So they don't necessarily need, because why also they can look at the other places not like we can.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so they have, and also they have lived through, their lifespans are so much long, so much longer than ours would ever be. So they have experience of the Buddha and all of that with them right now. Right? Experience of the Buddha and all of that right now. Actually, did I mention, maybe this would be a nice time to sort of, I think Damsiri and all of them know this story. I've already told them about Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw's experience. Remember, I've already told you all, right? Where there was, okay, for the others, story time.
Yeah.
So Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, who is essentially, you may know the technique from Venerable Dhammajiva's technique, which he learned actually from Burma under the lineage of Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. So during the time the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw was living, he was considered, he was an eminent monk. He was an eminent monk, also a very radical monk in his own right? And Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw technique was on Shuddha Vipassana, right? It's Shuddha Vipassana, and it's one of the fastest techniques out there, which takes you into Vipassana as fast as it does. There is no other technique which takes you into Vipassana as fast as Mahasi Sayadaw's technique takes you into Vipassana. So Mahasi Sayadaw, when he was living, of course, Burma was a different time altogether, and Mahasi Sayadaw Center, which is in Yangon. It is about a 30-minute. It's about 30 minutes from Shedagong. I hope maybe when Corona is over, I can all take you all to Burma and show you these places.
Oh, that's
right.
That's very good.
And so Mahasi Sayadaw's place. Mahasi Sayadaw was seen as a very eminent monk who practiced a lot of meditation, and he was a true meditation practitioner. And there was his lady who was in a very, very sort of poor, impoverished sort of village out of Yangon. And, people who know Burma know that, the gap between the well-off and those who are poor is so sort of, wide. So these people are very, very, very poor people. But then there was this woman who was from a village who was very, very sort of disciplined into the Dhamma. She was illiterate, yet she was a Dhamma practitioner, and she was well known within the village to be a Dhamma practitioner. Right, and she was a meditator. And so what one of the wealthier persons in the village, what he did was he asked her, why don't you go to one of these city temples and meditate, because the best centers where you meditate, for example, Mahasi Sayadaw's main center is in the city, right? So it is a little bit different from Sri Lanka, where in Sri Lanka the best places are out of the city. Right, in Burma the best places are in the city. Right, so she has said, I would love to, but then I can't afford it. So this person who was much well off than she was sponsored her to go to Yangon and meditate. So when she did, she started in a couple of days, she started speaking in tongues. Right, she started speaking in tongues, and when she started speaking in tongues, people thought that she might have gone mad, or that it was rather bizarre for this person to start speaking in tongues all of a sudden. So a person who after all of the people who saw her, or rather came to sort of inspect how she was doing, a person sort of racked up that, she is speaking in Pali, and she is actually asking to see Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. So Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, the news, someone took the news to Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, and Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, first they did not tell her she was speaking in Pali. Rather, they had said that, a woman is asking to see you, and he had said, I'm sorry, but I don't have time. And please ask her to see someone else. And because, essentially these monks in Burma are treated like absolute gods, they are treated like it is a level of devotion that you have not seen anywhere, right? It's a level of devotion beyond what you even imagine. They are treated like absolute gods in Burma. And you can imagine how a person like Mahasi Sayadaw was treated like, right? So he was like, I don't have time. But then the second time around, when the news was taken, it was related to Mahasi Sayadaw that the woman is actually speaking in Pali. Then Mahasi Sayadaw was quite intrigued how this illiterate woman is managing to speak in Pali. So then, he allowed her to come, and then she comes, and it was a whole meeting which is actually recorded, and the voice recording is also there, where the conversation between Mahasi Sayadaw and this lady occurs in Pali language. Mahasi Sayadaw spoke Pali very well. And he also attended the Chatta Sanghayana with Venerable Balangoda Ananda Maitri Thero. But of course, Mahasi Sayadaw was much, much, much senior than Venerable Balangoda Ananda Maitri Thero. But he was also there in the Chatta Sanghayana and was one of the main presiders of the Chatta Sanghayana. So in this conversation, it is said that this woman relates that she has been possessed by a being in one of the higher tiers of the Deva realm, right? Which realm? It was a Paranimita Vasavatiya, right? And Mahasi Sayadaw asks her, why is it that they don't show up in the human realm to sort of create belief amongst the people? Why they don't sort of appear to the people in the human realm and create that belief to sort of prove that the Buddha Dhamma is true, if it is. And then they say, because first of all, they say the human realm is not like what it was before. It is much, much more sort of corrupt and unwholesome, and it reeks of unwholesomeness, and it is of great difficulty that they found a woman with this amount of purity where they could use her to venerate Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, right? That is their first thing, right? Thus sort of saying that, it is very, and this is also related in the Dhamma to say that, the Sila Gandha is spoken of in the suttas, right? The Sila Gandha, the smell of morality, right? So this is actually seen, and actually this is something which is spoken about. And then Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw, to Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw's request, they say, the humans are unable to sort of, if we are to show ourselves, the humans will not be able to take up, or the human's heart will sort of break into two because of the lust that would arise upon seeing such beauty in a celestial form, right? In a celestial form. This can be sort of taken from the example of how the Buddha's cousin, remember the Buddha's cousin who was sort of thinking about his wife, the Buddha takes on a trip. The Buddha takes on a trip to show of the better possibilities and options out there. Which I think was very, very sweet and funny of the Buddha also, right? and shows, and then he says, oh, compared to these beings, these beings, my wife is like a rilava, a monkey. She's so ugly compared to these sessions. So then remember the Buddha says, okay, so I will teach you how to get one of them, right? You have to protect you have to practice sila, morality, samadhi, concentration, and panya, wisdom. If you do that, you will get them. right? Which is again the humor of the Buddha in one way, also to sort of, which also sort of explains how relaxed the Buddha was, wasn't it? He wasn't in sort of, if you would ask a very serious monk, about Dhamma, he would elucidate it in, but then you see the Buddha being able to be a person who gave such a simple answer, or a simple way, right? You could elucidate how simple the Buddha was in his mind in a way. And then, of course, it says that, and then it says, this is the conversation which happens between, and then so the woman offers, and then the woman requests that Mahasi Sayadaw's preaches some sort of Dhamma, and that all the other deities are also listening in on this discussion which is taking place. And Mahasi Sayadaw actually explains or gives a sermon in Pali about the Dhamma, and this is in the sort of the in a hall full of people as well. So these kinds of occurrences have happened between, and this is to do with sort of the fine material, so to say that these beings have a very keen intellect, right, which is able to sort of devise a Dhamma to far greater reaches than we are able to. However, just like, for example, the stress hormones are some of the primary hormones for us to establish compassion and compassion, love, kindness, and all of these brahmacharyas. Not brahmacharyas, the Brahmaviharas. The Brahmaviharas, just like that, the human experience is the only experience that can persuade a person to attain Buddhahood, right? I would, in thinking about it, I would understand it in this way. A Deva would easily give up, right? A Deva would easily give up because the experience of a Deva is much, much more cushy and comfortable. The experience of a human is much, much more emotional and much, much more sort of, I would say, a mixture of both pain and pleasure to an extent where we are able to feel suffering more in the world. Right? I would say that is the reason that devas and beings above that, or above the human experience or human birth, are unable to experience or sort of really attain Nibbana, because to attain Buddhahood, you must have a great amount of compassion. That compassion, to that extent, will not arise in a Deva who only sees a limited part of the suffering of the world, which is in their way seen through intellect. Here, we can literally get our hands dirty in the suffering itself. We have a better, more intimate experience of what suffering, pain, and happiness is in this life. Right? Why happiness? Not because we had the experience of the Devas, but because we know what pain is. Right? We have frailing bodies. Right? For decades on, we sometimes suffer. Right? From knee problems to heart problems to chest problems to muscle problems to cancer to diabetes to, or how many illnesses. Right? We suffer. Right? We go through these problems. Right? The moment after hitting 30, slowly you develop eyesight or whatnot. Now you see that is the experience of suffering. Right? What we have done now in sort of our experience, we have put this or made this normalcy, which is true. It is normal. But when we put it down to normalcy, what we also do is we do not think about it. That is where the present moment awareness, why the present moment awareness gives you the ability to be aware rather than just shoving it under the carpet, which allows the person to be better aware of that experience. Not because like Bhante Rahula said, life is suffering, but the body frails, the body gets weak. But this is not to say to give up on the body, but this is to say take care of the body. Because it is going to sort of you get weaker, take care of it take care of it and use it for the practice, which was said in the talk, right? Just so. So this is all to do with them. This is all to do with that human experience there. All right. So moving on, coming back to the book. The commentators say that the beings there possess the physical form of these organs, but these organs lack sensitivity and hence cannot serve as bases for smelling, tasting, and touching. Sensory experiences, smelling, tasting, and touching, sensory experiences that therefore do not occur in the fine material realm. In the immaterial world, no bases exist because all the bases are made of matter. Because all the bases are made of matter. Immaterial, no matter, no bases. Right? Is that understood? Any questions?
I really didn't get that one. Could you
Which part?
the difference between the material world and the immaterial world? The base are made of matter, that part.
Yeah, so in the immaterial world, as the name suggests, in the immaterial world there is no material, right? Meaning there is only mind. In the fine material world there is a body, but in a finer, more subtler sense, right?
Yeah.
So Hasu, these things have been, I'm very sorry to say this, but these things have been covered. So if you would also sort of maybe try to read the book, and we have the recordings also on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I will do that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. All right.
Yeah.
So moving on. Therein the 5 elements of sense consciousness occur entirely dependent on the 5 sensitive parts, right? Therein the 5 elements of the sense consciousness occur entirely dependent on the 5 sensitive parts of the sense. Of what is the sensitive part? Sukkhama Rupa, right? Or the Pasada Rupas, right? The sensory parts where the objects are taken. For example, in the eye, the retina, right? And so on and so forth, right? As their respective bases, 2 into 5, remember, all of you are okay? Yeah. 2 into 5 is 2 into 5, we know that. But the mind element, namely the 5-door adverting consciousness and the receiving 5-door adverting consciousness, and the 2 types of receiving consciousnesses occur in dependence on the heart. Independence of the heart. Now, this is clearly saying which occurs where. Understood? Any questions? If you have any questions, please put your hand up, right? Or signal to me in some way. Yeah. Receiving occur in dependence of the heart. Likewise, those that remain, namely the mind consciousness element, comprises the investigating consciousness, the great resultants, the 2 accompanied by aversion, the 5-path consciousness, smiling consciousness, and the fine material sense consciousness occur in dependence on the heart. Going at it again, right? Likewise, those that remain, namely the mind consciousness element. What is the mind consciousness element? What is the mind consciousness element? Comprising the investigating consciousness, the great resultants, the 2 accompanied by aversion, the first 5-path consciousness, smiling consciousness, and the fine material consciousness, all occur depending on the heart, right? The remaining classes of consciousness, whether wholesome, unwholesome, functional, or supramundane, may be either dependent on or independent of the heart base, the immaterial sphere. Hold on. The remaining classes of consciousness, whether wholesome, unwholesome, functional, or supramundane, may be either dependent on or independent of the heart base, right? So it can be either dependent on or independent of the heart base. The immaterial sphere resultants are independent of the heart base because, of course, it is immaterial, right? Because it is immaterial. Now we should have a chart, right? The chart is down there. We will come to it, okay? So we will come to this part at the chart again, right? Then now moving on. Page number 146. I know that some of you did not get that paragraph, right? It was a bit confusing, yes? Use your heads to wave signal to me, please.
Yes.
So we will come to it at the chart, right? Let's read through. The 5 elements of the sense consciousness. The Abhidhamma, right? The Abhidhamma, in the Abhidhamma, all 89 types of chitta are distributed among 7 consciousness elements. Vijnana dhatu, right? Vijnana dhatu. Now this will come again in Dhamma Center, right? What are the Vijnana dhatus? Now these are dhatus. Now remember, we have ayatana, dhatu, satcha, right? All of these dwaras, all of these things. Now these are the way that the human experience is classified. Let us look at the Vijnana dhatu here, right? Table 3.7. Eye consciousness element is eye consciousness. Ear consciousness element is ear consciousness. Nose consciousness element is nose consciousness. Tongue consciousness element is tongue consciousness. Body consciousness element is the body consciousness. Mind element is the 5 senses to adverting consciousness and the receiving consciousness. Mind consciousness element, remember now this is important. Mano dhatu and mano vijnana dhatu. Now here it has only used Vijnana Dhatu, but you will often see Mano Dhatu and Mano Vijnana Dhatu. That is, those are the 2 words that you will see, right? It will not really appear as Vijnana Dhatu. It will come as Mano Dhatu and Mano Vijnana Dhatu. Mano Vijnana Dhatu is mind consciousness element. Now that is all the remaining other than those which are spoken of, other than the mind element, Mano Dhatu, and the rest of the 5 respective dhatus, right? Remember that. Now, what is that? The 3 chittas, right? The 3 chittas called mind element, mano dhatu, involve a very weak grasp of object, right? A very weak grasp of object. The 5 do adverting consciousness because it encounters an utterly novel object and is followed by a chitta with a different base. The 2-fold receiving consciousness because it follows a chitta with a different base, right? What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Dhamma Center, you have something to say?
Yeah, I think you have to know about Chitta Viti, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's why I was laughing, yeah.
Next time we do Abhidhamma, I'm going to not do Pakandaka. We are going to do Pakandaka after Vitis. Yeah. Actually, maybe we can invite Bhante Kaudape, Bhikkhu Bodhi for a talk, and we'll ask him. We'll corner him. We will say we have a complaint about your book. All right. Now, so okay. So what it is saying here is because the base is different. So now that is a point to note there. If the bases switch, right? If the bases switch, or if the place where it is cognized switches, then there is a weakness in that cognition, right? That is one of the points which is mentioned there. We'll visit that again. The three chittas called the mind element involve a weak grasp of the object. The five-door adverting consciousness because it encounters an utterly novel object and is followed by a chitta with a different base. The twofold receiving consciousness, right? The twofold receiving consciousness, right? Because it follows a different base. The twofold receiving consciousness because it follows a chitta with a different base. The five elements of the sense consciousness are slightly stronger because they directly see, hear, smell, taste, or touch the object. But they are still relatively weak because they come between two chittas with a base different than their own. How am I supposed to explain that? All right. Now, between their own, the chittas collected under the mind consciousness element mano vinyana dhatu being preceded and followed by chittas which share their own base are capable of a fuller and clearer cognitive grasp. Now that is the point which they are trying to make, right? So please underline or sort of highlight that point there. Right, that is the point that they are trying to make. The chittas collected under the mind consciousness element manodhatu being preceded and followed by chittas which share their own base are capable of a fuller and clearer cognitive grasp of object. Now just a point of information, I don't want to confuse you too much. We will come to this when we come to VT. I feel like if I tell you that, you will get confused now. Just for point of information, when an object arrives at the mind, it takes one mind moment for the object to mature where now the object can give fruit. Okay. It takes one mind moment. Just imagine, right? You are doing something, right? Someone says something out of the blue, out of the ordinary. Someone says something completely out of the situation. Right? It takes you a moment to realize what did that person say. Right? Now it takes you, it is like that. Similarly, right? Similarly, in a consciousness mind moment, it takes one mind moment for anything to mature, for a mind moment to an object to mature where now the mind is conditioned by that object, right? So when you're in a deep sleep, that is why, remember, there's bhavanga chalana, bhavanga upacheda. Bhavanga, bhavanga chalana, bhavanga upacheda. Bhavanga is like you're in deep sleep, someone is now coming and knocking on your body and saying, get up, right? Now then it actually appears at the bhavanga moment. Now 3 mind moments appears in the bhavanga moment. Bhavanga chalana, now after one mind moment, the knocking or the sound, that is where your mind now starts to sort of shake according to whatever object which has now arose in the mind. And now when that object has further matured, now what happens is it breaks the sleep. It breaks the bhavanga. You get it? So it takes one mind moment each time for it to mature and become powerful enough so that the mind is now influenced. So there is like sort of a processing time, right? So coming back, the other parts, it is not important right now, really. Even if you don't understand, don't think about it. Just put a star or just have a marker there, right? Because we will have to do the VTs for you to understand. What they are trying to say is, though, if they share their own base, it will be a more powerful cognitive process. That's all they're trying to say in that paragraph, right? But the mind element occurs in dependence on the heart. The mind element arises depending on the heart. That is a 5-door adverting consciousness and the receiving consciousnesses, right? Arise depending on the heart. That is the heart base. The 33 chittas enumerated here do not arise in the immaterial world. They do not arise in the immaterial world. Right? In the immaterial world. But only in the worlds where matter exists. Hence, they are always supported by the heart base. Hence, they are always supported by the heart base. Right? The chittas accompanied by aversion do not occur in the fine material and the immaterial planes, because aversion has been well suppressed as a prerequisite for attaining jhana. The first path consciousness, the path consciousness of stream entry, cannot occur in the immaterial realms because it is contingent on hearing the Dhamma. The first path consciousness, the path consciousness of stream entry, cannot occur in the immaterial realms because it is contingent. Right? I hope all of you understand the word contingent. It is the hearing of the Dhamma is important for the seeing or arriving at the position of the first stream entry or the first state of sainthood. Right? On hearing the Dhamma, which presupposes the ear faculty. Right? Ear faculty. The smile producing consciousness, of course, requires a body to exhibit a smile. So that also will not occur, right? The remaining classes of consciousness. Now, any questions with regards to that? Right? We are going to, all of this is going to, we are now coming down to the chart, and now we are going to revisit everything that was spoken of before, right? The remaining classes of consciousness. There are 10 unwholesome chittas, excluding the 2 aversions, 2 dosa, right? The 8 great wholesome chittas, the 8 great functionals, the 4 immaterial wholesome, the 4 immaterial functionals, 7 supramundane, excluding the first path, and the mindo adverting, a total of 42. These chittas are dependent on the heart base when they occur in planes where matter exists, in the sensuous plane and the fine material plane, and independent of the heart base when they occur in the immaterial plane. Independent of the heart base when they occur in the immaterial plane. The immaterial sphere resultants only occur in the immaterial plane and thus do not depend on any base on the 3 planes. Right, on the 3 planes. Now let's look at the chart. Now, so you look at the chart, right? And I'm going to go back up and read that for you, and you keep looking at the chart, okay? So I am reading the paragraph 21, but you keep on looking at the chart, right? Therein, the 5 elements of the sense consciousness occur entirely dependent on the 5 sensitive parts as their respective bases. But the mind element, namely the 5 adverting consciousness and the receiving consciousness, occurs in dependence on the heart. Likewise, those that remain, namely the mind consciousness element comprising the investigating great resultants, 2 accompanied by aversion, the first path, smiling consciousness, and the fine material sphere occur depending on the heart. The remaining classes of consciousness, whether wholesome, unwholesome, functional, or supramundane, may be either dependent or independent of the heart base. The immaterial sphere resultants are independent of the heart base. Why? Because it arises wholly within the immaterial sphere. Now we are looking at the chart altogether, right? Now, what that first class of consciousness or that first description meant was where the object was gross, right? Where the object sphere grows to an extent that it would have to occur within a base where there is some sort of gross material base. Then it becomes subtle, ending in such a subtlety where the body is not there. So because the body is not there, those elements cannot be there. Let's look at the chart together. The eye base, right? Now the eye base, right, occurs, the eye consciousness is a part of the eye base. You look at the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, right? Now all of them, two. What are the two? Wholesome resultant, unwholesome resultant, found in the ahetuka or the rootless consciousnesses, right? Ahetuka or the rootless consciousnesses, the wholesome and the unwholesome resultant. That is clear. Is that clear on everyone? Right? That is easy. That is easy to understand. Now we have the mind element. What is the mind element? Which is based on the heart base, right? Which is based on the heart base all the time, which is the five sense door adverting consciousness, which is the five sense door
and the two receiving.
And the two receiving, right? Which is five sense to adverting consciousness and the two receiving consciousnesses, right? Which is then the mind element, right? Which is then the mind element. Then we have now those three, the five sense to, now look at this. Why is it always dependent upon the heart base? Think about it. Five sense to adverting consciousness. What does it do? When some sort of pushpa, do you remember what it does? Five sense to adverting consciousness. Devika? Huh? Pushpa Matakada? Do you remember?
Is it rebirth linking?
No? No, Pushpa. Anoma?
I'm sorry, I can't figure out. Good.
What's the question again, Bhante?
What does the five sense to adverting consciousness do?
It turns the mind to a
Just have a look at just the first look.
I'm asking a person, no? Noeline, yes? What?
Just the first look at the object.
The first look at the object? No. Anoma?
To cognize an object?
No. What is the function of the five sense to adverting consciousness?
Is
Is it to turn the attention towards the object?
Yes, Ravini, you're correct to turn the attention towards the object.
Yes.
Right? Here, now everyone, you know English.
Yes.
Five sense door adverting consciousness.
Recognizing the object.
About how that is spelled, please. Five sense doors. What is the five sense doors?
The ear, nose,
tongue, body. Adverting. Adverting is to sort of
look at the thing and yes.
Consciousness. The consciousness which turns your attention to the five sense doors. Right? Five sense doors. So it is in the name itself. All right. Thank you, Ravini. Right. So now the five sense doors, what does it do now? It adverts the mind to the sense doors. For that to happen, what must be there? A body. It must be something which is coarse or gross. That is why it always dependent upon the heart base. Do you get it? Right? That is why it's always in the heart base. Plus now the receiving. Now receiving, what does it do? It's in that sort of, it sort of receives the objects which arise at the five sensory bases, or actually five sense doors, right? Now, when that happens, again, what do you need? You need a body, you need materiality. Because of that, it's always again at the heart base. Do you understand now? Right? Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone who doesn't? Right. Now, heart base, sometimes. Right? Now we have done heart base, always heart base, sometimes. Now, what is heart base? Sometimes greed, right? Greed. The 8. Delusion. 2. Right? Mind-o adverting. 1 there. Sense sphere wholesome. 8. Sense sphere functional. 8. Immaterial sphere wholesome. 4. Immaterial sphere functional. 4. And the other spheres, right? Other supramundane chittas, except the first one, right? Except the first one. Actually, hard base, we did not do the other ones, did we? Okay, we'll do the other ones also. So hard base first, now come back to the first hard base. I forgot to do the other ones. Hard base, hatred, right? Why is hard base hatred to two hatred consciousnesses always based or rise based on the hard base or the Hadevatu? Who can tell me?
Because it's a
What? Who can tell me? Was it Devika?
it's Swaminathan, it's hard based because if you're hating somebody, it's really truly somebody's comes from the heart, I suppose. Hatred.
No.
No. Doesn't mean that.
Miri?
Well, Bhante, is it because you need matter for it to happen, and you don't get aversion in fine material and material planes? You only get it in the where matter exists. You have to have a heart base where only a matter exists.
Correct. I'm thinking about the hate that we have. Hate always has an appearance, isn't it? Even if it is a wrong view in a certain way, we often hate the person or have some sort of aversion. Hate is a strong word, but have a sense of aversion to a person who has demonstrated such kinds of a wrong view, or the image of that kind of a wrong view. Meaning, imagine such a wrong view at play. Do you get it? Do you get what I'm trying to say? No? Can I see some heads, please? Yes or no? Yeah? No? Meaning now, for example, what I mean is, okay, let's talk about the wrong view of saying, we'll talk about the black and the white, right? The black and the white. Now, in that, if we are to think of it, the black people being treated differently to the white people. Now, just that view, for example, if you think about it, you have a picture of it in your head. That picture has been made out of matter. That's what I'm trying to say, right? Meaning even a wrong view, right, which you hate or which you try to have aversion towards, has a sense of a picture which has been created through past experiences or whatever it is, has a sense of a sort of a representation. Yeah, even for example, if we take enlightenment in a certain way, we have a representation of it in our minds to a certain extent, of what that represents, or what that word represents, right? So it is, maybe you are correct, it is because of that, the fact that it needs a representation of matter there, and because of that, because it's such a gross feeling, right? It is that reason why we need, or it will always arise based on the Hadaya Bhattu, right? Right. Now, the next one, 3 mind element we have discussed. Now, investigating consciousness. Why? Investigates that which arises within the 5 sense bases. Right? It investigates that which arises within the 5 sense bases. So it should always arise depending on the mind element. Right? Now, moving on. Then we have smiling. Smiling, you need a body. You need a body to smile. So when you need a body to smile, and if you're smiling, then it will always mean that you are going to have a physical heart base for it to occur. Right? Understood?
Yeah. Yes.
Clear? Anyone please disturb me anytime. Right? Meaning during the class, huh? Just to make that clear.
Bhante,
Yeah.
the smiling consciousness then be in the body base because it needs a physical representation?
Please repeat.
Why is the smiling consciousness not in the body base? Because it's like a physical action.
Why is it not in the body base? Because it is a physical. Because you're smiling. Well, actually, that is a good question in a way. But the thing is, the body base is about feeling, right? The body base is about feeling. You smile at something which you have some sort of view about, right? Which is mind. Do you get it? The body base does only functions of feeling, whether it's bad or something which is good, right? Let's say as a massage or a nice warm shower, which is nice, or someone hits you, which is bad. These are the 2 experiences that you will have within the body base. In the mind base, that is where you have, for example, this use of hands, the way that we talk, the mannerisms, being Sri Lankan, blah, blah, blah. All of these things belong within the base of the mind, because that's where memory and all of these things are, right? So if we smile, if we sort of look at a person who is doing some good, and if we are smiling because of a certain value that we have rather than anything else. Got it, Rini?
Yes, thank you, Bhante.
Thank you. All right. Then it is the sense sphere resultant, right? The sense sphere resultant, where does the sense sphere resultant occur? Sense sphere resultant, where does it occur?
The 5 sense doors.
Sense sphere, okay, first question. What are the sense sphere resultant consciousnesses?
It is the beautiful, wholesome.
Sorry?
The beautiful, wholesome, and resultant.
The beautiful.
The wholesome ones and the resultant ones. Yes. Resultants and the functional ones.
Correct, right? So now the beautiful resultants, right? The beautiful resultants, even through Patisandhi, where does it arise? It has to arise within the human plane, right? Or the low planes, all where there is material, mind and matter. The beautiful resultants always arise in a place with mind and matter. Hence, it will always arise based on the heart base. Do we understand? I think now you get the way this is looked at.
Yeah.
Now you understand.
Yes.
So it is all to say, really, this thing is all about where do the consciousness arise? Right? That's where it says, does it arise wholly in a plane where it is with the mind and the body? If so, it always arises with the heart base. If it arises both in a plane of mind and body and a plane of immaterial or fine material or immaterial, then it is sometimes. That is all it is. You get it? Right? So let's continue, right? Sense sphere resultants, we did that, right? And then we have fine material sphere. Fine material sphere, 15 consciousnesses of the fine material sphere. Now, 15 consciousnesses of the fine material sphere, all of which again arises always dependent on the heart base. Why? There is a body. There is mind and matter. Right? Do we understand?
Yes.
Right? Then we have the last, which is the stream entry path. Now, what is the reason for this? I want Samantha to give me the answer for this. Samantha?
Yes.
Yes. Samantha, what is the reason that the stream entry path always arises dependent on the heart base?
So that will be in the supramundane part, Bhante? One of the supramundanes.
Yes, that is clear. Stream entry is the first.
Yeah.
Why? Why does it always...
Stream entry now. Let's have a look now.
Yeah. So stream entry, why does it always arise? Dependent on the heart base, Samantha.
So you got to have matter,
Okay.
a body.
Yeah.
Self view. So you have a view of the self.
No.
No.
Is it because you got ears to listen to the Dhamma?
Yes, it is. But Noeline, I appreciate if you don't jump next time. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right. It is because to enter stream entry, you need to listen to the Dhamma. Now, listening to the Dhamma, mind you, right? This is to say, remember now, this point is taken, misunderstood, and taught sometimes. This does not specifically mean that you can attain through just listening to the Dhamma. It means that listening to the Dhamma or sort of taking in the Dhamma has an important part or plays a very important part in the access of that concentration consciousness which allows to attain Nibbana. Now this is relating to remember Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu both, right? Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu both are based on listening to the Dhamma. You remember what is Uggatithanyu and Vipanchithanyu? For those of you who do not remember, Uggatithanyu persons are those people who have to listen to the Dhamma, or rather those people who attain Nibbana by listening to a short or rather point of Dhamma. Whereas Vipanchitanyus are those people who attain Nibbana through listening to a detailed explanation of Dhamma. Then we have the Neyas and the Padaparamas who have to practice the Dhamma accordingly to be able to attain in this life, especially a lot of meditation. And then we have the Padaparamas who won't be able to attain in this birth, but will be able to attain in the next life if they do practice morality, sila, samadhi, concentration, and meditation. All of those states are dependent upon listening to the Dhamma. The first two talk about listening to the Dhamma from the Buddha himself, right? Where it is either short or a detailed fragment of Dhamma, right? The other two is about being able to listen to the Dhamma, where then one would be able to practice. That is the reason why Sotapanna or the stream entry can only arise where there is mind and matter. Mind and matter, right? Susan, your hand is up. What would you, is it a question?
Yeah. Yes, this is a comment. I think the volume suddenly has deteriorated, or the quality of the sound has suddenly deteriorated. Is it possible because a lot of participants are not muted? It just has deteriorated. It was very clear earlier.
Is it because people are, well, okay. We haven't had that problem before, but okay. Many of them are muted. So let's see. How is it now, Susan?
Well, just carry on. We'll see. I'll listen.
Okay. Maybe it is on your side, Susan.
Yeah. Well, now that you have muted, no, there's still a few people that's not muted. Maybe that's the reason I'm saying. Perhaps
it is
that's
probably
the
not,
reason.
It's not.
Okay. Maybe it's just my ear base then.
All right. So stream entry part 1. All right. So is that clear to everyone? Is there any questions that anyone has? Please don't think that, it's a foolish question, or, it's not, that is also comparison, it's not anything like that. If you have a question, please ask, right? So Chamari Lakshman, Sujatha, Lakshmi, Aruna, Shriyani, are all of you okay? Samantha, Padma?
Yes, Bhante, so far okay.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, Bhante, but confused a bit.
Confused a bit, but Sujata, you have just joined, no? So you have to do.
Yeah, I'm very new, really.
Yeah, I'm going through your former lessons. So
Good. Please go through it. Please go through it. All right. So now we are coming into hard base sometimes. Right? We'll start with the first greed rooted, right? And delusion rooted. Delusion, we know, is the cause for our existence in samsara. Our existence in the round of rebirth and death is wholly because of the delusion that we have, thinking that each and everything that we cognize to the mind or any of the 5 sensory bases is either is where you see it as yours, or yourself in it, or amidst it, right? Or created by you or belonging to you. Because of these reasons, that is why you have, or we are all here basically, delusion, right? So delusion would arise in both the human plane, the material plane, and the immaterial plane, right? That is why it is sometimes same as greed, you see, right? The purpose, the reason behind even having a rebirth in the immaterial plane, remember, as we progress along the jhana, yes, we were able to let go of Rupa Raga, but Arupa Raga still exists, right? Meaning now Rupa and Arupa Raga, the lust that we have towards materiality and the lust that we have towards immateriality, right? The craving that we have to those two bases, right? Because it exists, still there is that greed. So it can arise in both in a plane where there is mind, a plane where there is physical materiality, and a place where there is no materiality. Understood? That is why it associates the hard base sometimes. Yeah? Did anyone, Pushpa, you look confused. Are you okay? Pushpa, can you?
Could I, sorry,
Yeah, Sujata.
excuse me, Bhante. Could I know the page? I've sort of missed it now.
Yeah, it's 147.
147, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Pushpa, are you okay? And did you understand? Okay. Here, Malik? Okay, good.
May I please ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah. What is the exact difference between illusion and delusion?
An illusion and a delusion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. An illusion and a delusion. Okay. Wow. And what is the difference between an illusion?
Bhante,
Huh? Yeah.
illusion is an object that is already there, but they perceive it in a different way. Whereas delusion is an abnormal belief that's out of keeping with their socio-cultural background. That's
so we can see illusion.
Illusion is,
we can perceive it in an illusionary way.
Yeah.
Rather than see an illusion. So, for example, the word illusion has been used by the Buddha to relate to, for example, Ditti, views, is considered illusionary. Tanha is considered illusionary. And conceit is considered illusionary by the Buddha. This is to say, these are not things which are really existent. These are wholly created by the implications of mind. But for example, now let's take this bottle. Now you can touch it, it's there. Now this can be seen in a way which is distort. Now that is delusion.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
It can be seen in a way which it is distort. That is delusionary. Illusionary, it does not exist. Right? So that is actually a strong, I mean, that is actually, I mean, Hasu's question is quite sort of important if we are going into very deep Dhamma to say, because when you say illusion, then everything that we have some sort of craving for, every view that we have, and every sort of conceit that we have to say that we are higher or lower than a person, right? It is all mind-made, baseless, according to
the. If I think that I'm the best and everything, that's illusion, right? I'm being illusional or delusional.
Well, it is then to be seen by the way from which aspect you're referring to. It is as a creation of mind, it is an illusion. Now, when you're looking at something and you're saying, oh, I am actually better than this, or I am better than everyone else. That is an illusion of mind, which is created by different other conditions, which are not really existent, right? Which is only created by you, right? When we can also to sort of, in English language, we can use the word delusion, but it will fit more in the terms of illusion.
Okay.
Right? More in Dhammic terms. It will fit more in the terms of illusion rather than a delusion. Right? But if we take the reason for that illusion to arise, it is delusion.
Okay, I understand.
So the root behind that illusionary thought is delusion. Okay?
Yeah.
Clear? Yeah?
Clear. Thank you.
Okay. Delusion. Okay, moving on. Mind-o-adverting consciousness. So mind-o-adverting consciousness, right, which is to do with the mind, right? And this mind-o-adverting consciousness can appear both, we know, we have it, and the immaterial beings also have it. So it can arise in both planes, you see. So that's why it sometimes take hard base and sometimes it also could arise without. And then we have the sense sphere resultant. The sense sphere resultant consciousnesses, the sense sphere wholesome, sense sphere wholesome consciousnesses, which is the beautiful consciousnesses there, all can arise either in as a human, right, as a being within the human realm, or in the other realms as well, right? So with a good so with the heart, with the base of body, or without, right? Understood, right? Because it can arise both in both of those planes. And then we have the sense sphere functional, right? We know that functional, if you are functional as an arahanta, you can be in the highest realms as well, right? And because of that reason, it can appear as a human, it can appear to a human in a human realm with materiality and mentality, and it can also appear in a place where there is only mentality, right? Then we have the immaterial sphere, wholesome, immaterial sphere, functional, right? Which are both then able to experience it. Sometimes it can appear in the human realm, we know the jhanas, you know, all of that, and also in those realms. That's why it's sometimes a game. Understood? I feel like there's a bit of confusion in the atmosphere. Is there any confusion here?
Bhante, when these consciousnesses arise sometimes without the heart base, do they just arise with no base at all in those instances? Like for the beings of the Arupa Vachara planes?
Yes, it can. For example, immaterial sphere, there is no base at all, right? So it can appear with no base at all, right? Or it can appear with the bases, right? For example, a non-returner could be in the highest planes, right? Non-returner could be in the highest planes, where then he sort of passes away from there and attains sort of to Nibbana. A once returner could be in that plane and come back, right? So it can appear in both of these planes with the base or without the base, right? Then we have, right, the other supramundane chittas, which is all to do with the supramundane chittas after Sotapanna. You can go to any of these other planes and then attain there. Continue their attainment through the meditation practice in the Brahma realms and beyond, right? That is what it is. That is so those attainments, so we can attain arahanthood in this plane, in the human plane where there's materiality and mentality, and also we can attain it in the future plane, not future, the higher planes where there is
Supramundane.
Right? Do we understand? What is it that if any, is anyone having a question about this? Is it clear as day?
Yes.
I feel like it's not for some reason. Hey Malik, is it clear? Can I ask a question then? Huh? Noeli?
Yes, Bhante, it's about this material sphere. It says no bases exist in the material sphere.
Correct. Immaterial
sphere, no bases exist as bases made of matter. But then under that, under this third section, you only have immaterial functionals, but not the other two.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Okay. So the immaterial functionals, right now, if we take the immaterial functionals, right? The immaterial functionals, where can it arise now? Can an arahant living in the human realm, one of us, have an immaterial jhana? And if that person has an immaterial jhana, is it going to be an immaterial wholesome or an immaterial functional?
functional, is it?
It is going to be immaterial functional. For that reason, it is going to be a chitta which arises in the human realm. Can this chitta arise? Now let's say that there is an arahant in the immaterial world itself, right? Will the functionals then arise in the immaterial world where there is no base? Yes or no?
Then
Yes.
that's resultant.
Immaterial sphere, right? Immaterial, in the immaterial sphere, can there be arahant? What is the doubt here?
I think it can.
Yes, Bhante. There can be an arahant in immaterial sphere.
There can be an arahant in immaterial sphere.
Yeah.
Why are you saying no, Del? And after attaining to stream entry, they can attain in those bases. It is only stream entry that they have to get from this world. Right?
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say stream entry developed jhana, immaterial jhana, went to the immaterial plane, and one could practice there to attain nibbana. And actually, there are people or beings who have listened to Dhamma from the Buddha, right? And they're mostly meditators. So why, I can't understand why there is a doubt that you can't have a birth in an immaterial plane where there's an arahant there.
Bhante,
Yeah.
you can't listen to Dhamma.
Who have listened previously.
But you know the Dhamma.
Dhamma when you are
The
in
quantum,
immaterial.
yeah.
You can't listen to Dhamma when you are.
The listening, okay. The listening is only important to Sotapanna.
Okay, all right.
The listening is only important to stream entry.
Yeah.
So you can listen to the Dhamma and also you can read minds.
Yeah.
Because of that reason, you can sort of learn from the other beings who are there also, right? And also tikka panya, the penetrative wisdom which allows the not penetrative wisdom, the sort of the English word, but this sort of high amount of wisdom which allows one to see Dhammas, right? And also can remember past lives, which allows for suffering to be able to be sort of cognized. So all of those elements are there. They are not as weak as we are, you know? Right. So is there any question about it? Any doubt concerning that then? No, Eileen?
Clear now, thanks, Bhante.
Now you're okay, right?
Yeah.
So that's the reason. Now so the immaterial sphere wholesome, right? Immaterial sphere functional, both can arise in the human plane and arise in the immaterial plane. If it arises in the immaterial plane, it has no base. If it arises in the human realm, because there's materiality and mentality, there is a base. So it is sometimes. But when we take immaterial resultant, look at the chart, immaterial resultant, then we have no base. Why? Because immaterial resultant, where does it always occur? You are born in the immaterial sphere by the power of the immaterial resultant being in your patisandhi chitta, or the rebirth linking, which will give you a rebirth in the immaterial sphere. So it will always arise only in the immaterial sphere.
Dhyana. In Arupavachara.
Okay? Yeah, is that clear, everyone?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Bhante.
And that is that. Okay? So we've gone over time today. Okay. So then thank you very much. Any questions? Think about it, write them down, and bring it back next week.
And Bhante will listen to our lesson. You're going to upload it.
This lesson, yes. I'll upload
So
it.
it will make a yes. Thank you.
All right.
Next week we will start the Chitta-viti.
Are we done today?
We stopped at 22.
Shall we just read this small part also then?
Yes.
And then start with Chitta-viti next time then, yeah?
Okay, only a little bit here. 22 summary.
Yeah, paragraph 22 summary. It should be known that in the sensuous plane, 7 elements are dependent on the 6 bases. In the fine material plane, 4 are dependent on 3 bases. In the immaterial plane, 1 single element is not dependent on any. 43 types of consciousness arise dependent on a base. 42 arise with or without a base. The immaterial resultant arise without any base. Right? Without
looking at the chart.
The answers, all which we have already done in the chart. So revisit, read, revisit, right? It's all about that reading, revisiting, make sure if you are not understanding it, make sure, put aside all your other books and just read this book, go through this book, write on this book, highlight, make sure that you sort of revisit any sort of questions. I think most of you are in Dhamma sort of Dhamma Center, you all can discuss it there. Make sure that you sort of go through the book, right? If you're just sort of going through the book here, you have to have some sort of experience before. Remember that even as a monk, I have gone through this book 5 times, right? So remember, you have to also revisit and apply it to your life, do a bit of meditation, think about how these consciousnesses appear to you as a person, and work with it a bit to sort of realize how it works. Yeah. So then guide to paragraph 2. In the sense world, etc., in the sensuous plane, 5 consciousness elements arise, each dependent on their own base. Right? On their own base. Remember the ear consciousness elements on the ear base, all of that. The mind element and the mind consciousness element in dependence on the heart base. In the fine material plane, the nose, tongue, body bases, along with their corresponding consciousness elements, are absent. So nose, tongue, body. Remember that.
Yes.
Nose, tongue, body do not arise, right? They have the bodily function, but it does not work in the way that it works here, right? Yeah. Then we have, along with the corresponding consciousness elements are absent. In the immaterial plane, only mind consciousness element occurs, and that other, there is no base, right? That is the end of the Pakinnaka Sangha. So now next week we are going to start with the Viti Sangha, right? With the Viti Sangha. Exciting, right? Exciting.
Yes.
Good. So then, yes, I will see you next week.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
Good to see you.